Now, Robinson, Illinois is not in your viewing area, but we have people from my area, Effingham T-Town, that watch you guys all over the place. I would say the wildest, in my opinion, that you guys have ever covered was the EF2 possible tornado that went through Robinson. Almost tore the whole town down, hitting the mill. Talk about just kind of the moment of being in that action.
You want to go first? You were driving that day.
So I was driving, but I think at that point when the Robinson tornado was starting to, before it even became a tornado, when it was still just a cell, before it became warned for anything, I think I just got back, and my first thought was, looking at radar, I was like, that could be something, because the whole edge of that storm had kind of just become a conglomerate blob where we had tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings along it. But there was that one cell out in front, and I was like, that could be something. I remember, though, one thing I did say, Jacob was over there at the weather pod, and I said, hey, look, there's some power flashes in Effingham. Now, I don't know if it was from the same storm or a different storm, but I do remember seeing power flashes, but still watching that radar, because I had my radar scope up and I was looking, and I was like, that could be something. So I kept an eye on it, kept the camera on it for a while, and then it kind of moved too far away for the Effingham camera. But after a while, I was like, this, and then it just got bad.
Anytime you see that storm out in front of the main line,
scary.
That's a storm that's going to cause problems. And that storm was rated a strong EF3. They upgraded it. They almost went to, they were like 5 mile an hour away from 4 on that one. And that analysis came out months later when they went back and were doing their surveys and realizing what happened. And that particular storm, from the studio perspective, while some say Robinson isn't in our coverage area, it really is. It's included on our maps. We consider our coverage area to be anything that's on our map. And so those far outlying areas like Robinson or way up north in Cheban's in Iroquois County or Jacksonville, Maridoja, they're still in our viewing area. We still cover them. We still have a responsibility to cover them. And we know too that not everyone's watching on TV over the antenna these days. There's cable companies. You can get streaming companies, Peacock or Paramount or all those streaming services, and then YouTube TV, things like that. And even on our app, social media, people are watching that way. So we were talking about that storm coming to Robinson 45 minutes before it even hit. So, hey, this is down past Salem. It's moving to the north and east, because we kind of knew right out of the gate that was going to be something that was pretty bad. And I remember that night we were talking on air about the path of that storm. You could see the debris ball on radar, and I knew that was not good. And you could also make out that the storm was, as it was heading towards Robinson, it was so close to going right through the middle of town. And it still hit, even though it didn't go through the middle of town, it still went through neighborhoods and whatnot. And I remember that night too, I had been down there a couple of times that fall before for some severe weather events in Robinson. I remember driving through there, and I remember being like, that oil refinery is on the east side of town. This could be really bad. And we started getting those damage reports pretty quickly. We had a lot of viewers that were on Facebook and in our chat saying, hey, I've got relatives in Robinson, or I'm in Robinson, power just went out. We get a lot of that interaction, which is really great because that adds to the real-time reports. But after that storm went through, we were real nervous, and we had that going on while we had tornadoes go through multiple towns up here in central Illinois. So in Sangamon County, a couple of towns got hit. One went right through the Dewey area in Champaign County. And so we had an event that was all over the place. And down there in Robinson, we're pretty lucky. Our sister station in Terre Haute does cover there as well.
They picked up a lot of the
So they got people down there pretty quickly. But that storm didn't just hit Robinson. It hit Sullivan, Indiana. And I think the entire length of that storm, that tornado killed 6 people, but there were 2 others killed on another tornado that formed that storm in Indiana at a state park. And so we had a lot of, team coverage, not only from us here locally, but from our affiliates. And that was an event, too, that was regional. It was all over.
Yeah, that was one of the, at that time, I think, wasn't that the worst tornado outbreak in Illinois history?
I think it was
one of them.
One of the top ones, for sure. It was tornadoes north, south, east, west. Chicago got hit hard. We got hit hard. Southern Illinois got hit hard.
I think Mom and Dad had a tornado. I don't remember. Yeah, they had like an EF1 in Maryville. Not at the house, but near town.
Yeah, so that one was an event. And I remember I drove down there a few weeks afterwards, and driving through those areas, you could tell where it was, clear as day where it had gone through. And I remember driving past some of the homes where some of the folks there were some serious injuries and some fatalities, unfortunately. And whenever you see that, I had seen a lot of that in Mississippi. It seems like Mississippi gets big tornadoes all the time. We don't so much here, but that was an event where I was like, man. And you could see, too, on the southeast corner of the Marathon plant, there's a 4-way intersection. I think it's Marathon, the oil refinery. The intersection on the northwest quadrant was the plant. Across the intersection on the southeast side, the trees were mowed down from the tornado. It missed it by yards.
Yeah, I saw pictures the next morning from that because slept in because I was up way past
Me
my
too.
bedtime.
Yeah. I was tired after that.
I was, because I got in at like around before 2 o'clock that morning, and I didn't leave here until about maybe 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, it was a long day.
Yeah. And that's the thing, the whole time while we were working too, I was also texting mom and dad like, hey, there's a tornado warning. And then the next day when the reports came out, I think that was the Naperville tornado too. I don't know if that's the same. I think it was the same event. I might be wrong. But when I told mom and
There's a
dad,
lot of tornadoes in Chicago too.
Yeah,
that was one of the most active years, and that was the most active year I think until this year, which now has the record.
Which I remember I just had to text mom and dad like, hey, get down, and so it wasn't just Robinson, but it was all area wide, I think it said regional wide, and they said the next day I think they came out, or the next couple days later they had that report that was like not their house but south and east of town, so closer to actually the church I used to go to.
Yeah, and perhaps maybe my favorite part of that whole day, and I realized that was a day of destruction across the area and people's lives were changed, but probably my favorite thing about that day was we were on TV saying, I remember saying this as the storm was coming into Champaign County. I could tell on radar, like, it's about to put down another tornado, and it wasn't on the ground yet. But I'm like, it's coming. I knew it was coming.
Was that over by Thomasboro?
That was the Rantoul, Dewey up there.
Oh yeah.
We were looking at radar, and at one point, I think in the coverage, you kind of hear Kevin and I both kind of stop for a minute because we're looking at the radar. Like, Kevin, you see that? Like, yep. And we knew it was getting close to touchdown. At one point, I remember saying, if you know anyone in northern Champaign County, text them, make sure they're watching us, and make sure they know a tornado's coming. And we had people later that said, I got a text from my brother, my aunt, my cousin saying, the tornado's coming our way and you need to turn on Channel 3. And I thought that was really cool because those same stories came from the Robinson area. Well, our station was covering, but you guys were as well, and so we were watching on Facebook, and it's kind of neat where that whole process, it's not just us communicating, it's a two-way street. For the warning process, giving people heads up, our viewers are jumping right in and helping us out in that aspect too.
I was saying, Kevin and I had two different kind of roles that day. Me and Adam were in Storm Tracker. Kevin was in here, so Kevin had a lot more to manage. Being in the Storm Tracker, though, I could just feel like people wake up on a given day, on a severe weather day, and know that things are going to be bad. That was kind of one of those days. I was still in class. We were talking about things in class. Jeff Frame, a very well-known professor at the university, well-known across the country as being a guy who knows what he's talking about. Even he was a little scared of that day. So when Jeff Frame is scared, I have good reason to be a little nervous as well. But being out there in the Storm Tracker, it was this probably answers both questions because I've only been in the business for 2 years. So that day was definitely the scariest day I've been a part of. And just being in the vehicle with storms coming at 70 miles an hour, you can only drive 75 miles an hour on the interstate comfortably, so you could just barely stay ahead of that. And there was even points in time where we couldn't stay ahead of it. We saw it as long as we could, and we just had to bail at some point. So I think being out there in it definitely kind of was the welcome to the show kind of moment for me, where it was like, this is what it looks like when things are going crazy. And that was the highest risk in Illinois, I think, since 2013. So it was a big day. Obviously, I wasn't as much a part of the Robinson thing because I was busy doing other things at the time, but just being out there in one of those storms that did end up dropping down a tornado, I think it was close to Rantoul or Thomasboro, it was scary. It was scary being part of it, and it was just one of those things, like I said, you wake up and you knew it was going to be a pretty long day.
Yeah, we were on the air that day. We had previous tornadoes before the Robinson one had occurred that we were tracking over west of Springfield, it was Riverton, I think maybe.
Yeah.
And what we were doing is we were following these storms. Well, a lot of the storms were starting to kind of move out of our viewing area or getting on the edge of it. When Robinson happened, we noticed pretty clearly there was a tornado debris signature as bright blue and gray color on our debris tracker as you can get, which indicated this thing is lofting some major debris up into the air. And so I remember being like, we're gonna stay on and keep covering this. This thing is on the ground, and oh no, that thing's about to go through the plant over there. And we were like, oh boy, this would not be good. And so we stayed on. I think one of the more rewarding things that happened from that was after the fact, I got a lot of messages from people saying, thank you for being on and talking about this. Not because they were watching, because we're not their viewing area. They would have been watching Terre Haute or something. But people that lived in our viewing area had friends and family down there. And we got messages that said, oh my gosh, I would not have even known that it was that bad down there, but I was watching you guys do your coverage. I called my mom, I called my dad, told them to go to the basement. Their house is gone. But the only reason that they took shelter is because we were watching you guys from, I don't know if they were in Tuscola or something, but they were watching us from somewhere up here in our viewing area, talking about that storm. They called their parents, they took shelter, survived, and their house is gone, and we're just so thankful. So, you know, anytime there is severe weather like that or a tornado that we know is happening, even if it's edge of our viewing area, if it's that big and we know it, we're going to stay on, because there is that likelihood that somebody knows somebody that is watching our coverage and can tell somebody and make sure that they're doing okay. So that was big on the Robinson Day.
Look at the donut hole that's almost kind of opening up here, which is not a good sign. Robinson, and Jacob was talking about that, man, you need to be taking shelter down there. Absolutely. This thing is confirmed.
Man, Robinson is in some trouble here. Oh, wow, Kevin.
I would venture to say
It's a debris ball at this point, Kevin. Do you want me to put it on GR for you?
yeah, throw a GR there. I would venture to say this is the strongest. This absolutely is the strongest rotation we have seen on radar tonight.
Look at that.
Is the debris signature. This thing is coming right into Robinson. That's your debris ball.
Wow.
That's a debris ball right there. That's debris. And this is coming right in there. And this is on our extreme southern portion of our area, but we do have some people that do watch us down there. The Terror Hope Market does kind of cover this, but it is just kind of on the edge for us. But this is such an extremely large, dangerous tornado. We want to mention it. That thing's going to, unfortunately, you can see in some more rural portions down there of Crawford County, but if that goes through Robinson,
oh man, Kevin,
at that strength, that's going to be a bad.
Kevin, there's a big oil refinery
there's a
plant
huge,
down there too.
Huge oil refinery plant that's down there. It's one of the largest, reason people have jobs down there and whatnot. That would not be good. That comes through down there. We need to monitor that, and we're going to know in the next 10 minutes or so. Debris signature is here. You're going to see probably that tornado is probably right about here by now, and if this stays as strong as it is, that could make a direct impact into Robinson and Crawford County. If this grows, if you see this purple little debris ball grow when it gets here, we've got a bad situation on our hands down here in Robinson.
Kind of looking up at it, Kevin. That looks like perhaps there might be debris 12 to 15,000 feet up.
Okay, so you get to that, you're talking an EF3 tornado possibly. Okay, so maybe just south of town, barely.
Too close to call.
Wait, yeah, because that could be displaced off based upon.
And if it is south of town, then that's going right for the refinery down there.
That is not good. I know you can see that refinery. Can you pull up or go and take the radar off, and then yeah. So look at that right there. You see all of this right here? Oh man, this would be really bad. Oh my goodness. If that comes right through the refinery, that's not good, folks. Wow. We're going to be watching this carefully. This is really concerning to me.
I believe that they just built a catastrophic tornado emergency for Robinson.
Tornado emergency
for
Tornado
Robinson.
emergency. This is as bad as it gets. This is as bad as it gets for a tornado emergency. There's been a handful of times there's ever been issued a tornado emergency. I'm guaranteeing they're issuing this because this is coming through over the refinery in Robinson. I'd be curious, get into the chat there and see what they're saying about that, because this might turn out to be the biggest story of the day. If a large tornado goes over Robinson on the southeast side there of town, over that oil refinery down there, that would be really bad. Okay.
Boy, I made this graphic, and I hoped I never had to share it here. A strong to violent tornado with an emergency situation now for Crawford County, Robinson, Palestine, Trimble. If you know anyone down there, send them an alert here. This will be heading towards the intersection of Route 1 and State Route 33. That's on the east of Robinson. It's moving through the south side of Robinson now. A large flying debris, wind damage in areas nearby from that. We're seeing debris lofted several miles. This here is the most dangerous type of tornado with the tornado emergency in Robinson. And but this supercell storm now,
the next scan coming
Moved
in.
over. It moved directly over it.
It did, didn't it? Yeah.
It moved directly over that new. I've got my new scan.
Yeah, go ahead and take Kevin now on that.
Bad situation down here. You can see already how it's already passed, but there it is. And I'm going to switch over to that debris signature.
That's at 1 and 33 there, yeah.
Yes, at 1 and 33. It's exactly right. I think that must still be pulling off of the other radar there. So Jacob was just showing you how rare that is, but that just came through down there in Robinson at 1 and 33.
There's a gas
on
station
the ground.
I've been at before one time.
Yeah, a huge debris signature showing up there. That's eventually going to be going towards the Palestine area.
What would be the wildest storm you've ever covered, period?
The first one I can think of off the top of my head would have to be the Carl Junction tornado, or back in 2018, was it?
I remember that one.
You remember that one? I can't remember what year it is now off the top of my head. I think it was 2019 now that I think about it. That was when I was still kind of fresh, and we had tornado warnings before. I mean, I had done my first solo cut-in at that point, and our station wasn't quite yet on the Facebook Live and all that stuff just yet. That was when that was still kind of new at the time, relatively speaking, especially for such a small station. But I remember that day, it was the anniversary of the Joplin tornado. So not only were we talking about the anniversary of the most devastating event weather-wise for the city of Joplin and for that part of Missouri and southeast Kansas too, and that whole that area, that was one of the biggest days ever. I mean, that city is still scarred from that event. Not only was everybody on edge because of the anniversary, but we had a moderate risk for severe storms. And this is at the time now where moderate risk was the second behind high risk. So we weren't expected to get a high risk, but we had that moderate risk come up. And I just remember going, ooh, it is going to be a long afternoon, evening. And the reason that system was so sticks in my mind, because when we get severe weather events, a lot of the time, cold front comes in, knocks everything out, and slowly it just moves on like a wave, just moves out of here, or those storms start to fizzle out. That night, we started about, I want to say, I already worked the morning shift, and I was kind of anxious, didn't sleep well, tried to take a nap, because I knew I had to come back in. And I remember about 6 o'clock or so that afternoon, because they were still on Central Time, I went, hey, Chief, my chief at the time was like, hey, you want me to come in? He's like, no, you're good. I'm like, I think I'm gonna come in. So I came in to help out with him, and we're doing fine, all right, doing okay, and then we just got storms exploding. And Carl Junction had gotten hit by a tornado eventually at one point, and it was a really, really bad storm. That storm was just north of the station. You could see the edges of the striations and the edge of the wall cloud from our station, and in the back door. Like, I remember seeing the striations. It looked like almost a funnel, might not have been, but you could see the wall cloud for sure. And I was like, that's gonna be a problem. And I remember we were on air, and I kind of lost my nerve at that time. I was still pretty young, but I lost my nerve and went, oh, ooh, and like started to freak out a little bit, because I, again, had storm anxiety growing up. I still have it a little bit, but it's way more subdued than what it used to be. So the anxiousness was overfilling me, and I just had to step out for a minute, and it couldn't help Ray anymore. And I just kind of lost my nerve there for a second, but then I got back and kind of finished out once that storm had just moved north of our station. So there, Carl Junction got hit. I think it was an EF2 tornado. And that same storm, I think, it might have been the same cell, but that whole evening later on, that was a tornado that did kill 2 people way northwest of town. I don't remember if it was in our viewing area or not, kind of in that fringe zone. 2 more people got killed. We were still doing tornado warnings at the time. And then I think that same exact cell, because it kept producing tornadoes and dropping them and picking them up, that same cell, I think, was the same one that went to the state penitentiary over in Jefferson City. And so a friend of mine who worked at Jeff City at the time, we went to college together. She was right down the road from it when it happened, and it was one of the scariest situations because Jeff City also got hit. So it was a very long evening. So I was already on edge like everyone else because of the event and because of the severe weather. And I just remember going in from 6, and it got to a point where these storms would just not fizzle out. We were not losing in stability, and they were all on a warm front that just wasn't going north or south. It was sliding ever slightly to the east, or from the west to the east. So it was taking its sweet time, I guess for the camera there, this direction, but it was taking its sweet time to get through there. So storms kept popping on it, popping on it, popping on it. The cold front was way down the road. That was not what was gonna finish out the night. So we just had storms popping and popping. So every couple of minutes, a new tornado warning, new severe thunderstorm warning. And I remember going outside, and it was hot. Like, it was hot at like 8:30 at night. And I mean, it was humid, and it was just like, did the sun even go down? Did we even get a rest? And it was just, and I remember one of our camera guys who our photogs who was out there, who Gary, which we miss Gary. He passed away a couple years ago, but Gary went out there and said, "Bud, this is I've seen this before. This is bad. It reminds me a little bit of just that energy. You can kind of feel it outside. You could feel it being warm. I almost felt like it was getting warmer outside at times during that night. So we just multiple supercells just going all over the place. And I remember at one point it was probably closer to midnight, 2 o'clock. We're done with our newscasts and everything, and I just remember going, we're watching these storms. We still have a tornado watch going. Whew. And then my chief was like, "Hey, I'm gonna head home. You're gonna be here in a couple hours anyway. Do you mind sticking around?" I was like, "That's not a problem." Wait, hold on. We got another tornado warning. So another tornado warning kept popping up, and we had them all over the place. I mean, some of the pictures were pretty rough out there too of the storms themselves. Now, a lot of them didn't hit anything, but it was still just a long night. And even the next morning, I remember, I think I had to cut in after we got done with our morning show down in Arkansas, because we covered a couple spots in Arkansas, I think in one county for sure. And I just remember texting one of our camera ops at the time. I was like, "Can you bring me a Dr. Pepper? Because I'm going to need some energy to get through this morning." And just the whole morning was just watching the radar. So it was a long time. I got home, and the Chick-fil-A I bought the day before, I left in the fridge, and I finally ate it after I took a 4 or 5 hour nap. So
the first one I remember was we had an outbreak of tornadoes the night before the election, and so this was in my first television job in Mississippi, and I had to do the morning show then and was kind of helping out, and then came back that night, and I chased for this TV station down there as well, and so we were kind of watching these storms and whatnot. When the storm started, we finally got our first tornado warning. I say finally. Mississippi tornadoes happen any time of the day, but the event started about 10, 11 p.m. when things started getting bad. And our second most populous town got hit by a tornado that night in the viewing area. It went through a pretty heavily populated area, and it kept going, and we kept having tornadoes up there. And then later that night, about an hour or two later, we started having tornadoes coming through our first, third, and fourth most populous town. I mean, it was like every town in the area had tornadoes that night, and it was such a long night. And it put a lot of damage too. The next morning, then because it was an election, the newsroom was already so busy. It was I think it was a gubernatorial election, in fact, in Mississippi. It was a big election, and so the newsroom was already swamped with that. So I said, "Well, I'll go be your morning reporter and set up and go report on these damaged areas and kind of talk about what had happened." And there was a nursing home that got hit, and I later talked to some of the folks who were in that, and they were like, "Yeah, we were watching you, and we knew, we knew it was coming." And so that was probably my first experience with the news side of it, covering tornadoes as well, just kind of by happenstance. And then the election night as well, I was already volunteering to help with the digital side, because in smaller markets, you do a lot of work like that. So that was like a 30-hour day. I mean, it was wild, and I had never slept so hard in my life then. So we had that. I can think of another one. There's a lot of my experiences in Mississippi really are probably the ones that I talk about. We had another one where there's another pretty big outbreak, and we had a tornado. It was an EF3 tornado 2 blocks away from our television station, and I was out in the field at the time, but I was on we were communicating through the headset and whatnot. Like, I was connected into them, so I could hear everything that's going on. I could hear what they're saying, and there was a period of time where they lost power, the signal went off, and I could hear them all running to the basement before everything went off. And I remember thinking, like, uh-oh, and then on radar from my field unit, I could see the debris ball right next to the TV station. And I thought to myself, I was like, uh-oh, like, that's going to be not, I didn't know if the TV station was there. We got pretty lucky. We only had some minor damage to the building, but it went right through the middle of the town of Columbus, Mississippi, and it ended up killing a woman there. That was like a huge tornado event, because at the same time, we also had a historic flood going on in the same town. So we had hundreds of homes underwater. Now we had hundreds of homes that were hit by a tornado, and 2 events concurrent with each other, which was just, it was a wild event. We were out of power that night. I pulled my car up to the door. We ran an extension cord into the building, and that's how we powered some lights to the computer so we could do at least a Facebook broadcast for people, because a lot of things were happening in town that night. And that night then is like all the big names in TV were coming to town. Charles Peak was there. There were people from AccuWeather and all the other national companies to do reports going on. We're kind of the ground zero for that particular event. Probably the one that sticks out to me the most, though, is we had another tornado event where we had an outbreak expected pretty centrally located for us in northeast Mississippi, and it was prom night. It was a Saturday night and I had a number of school teachers that I was familiar with and friends with, and hey, there was one school in Webster County. It was the Eupora Consolidated School District, and they were having prom in Starkville, and they were having it at an event center that kind of had an outdoor space, and their school building had a lot of schools in the South after the Enterprise tornado of the 2000s started building gymnasium tornado shelters, basically a big concrete arena, similar to Assembly Hall, but just on a smaller scale, and that becomes a community tornado shelter. And they said, well, the chance of a tornado that day was really high. I said, well, if you're there and you don't feel like you have a shelter, you might want to keep it at the school. So that night, tornado was about a mile away from their school where they were all sheltered during prom, and so they're having, they're dancing at the dance floor in the gymnasium in the concrete bunker while the tornado sirens are going off. It was kind of neat. But then where their prom venue was as well is they had another tornado about a half mile from that went through the east side of Starkville. And so I kind of remember that night getting the hands-on of that experience. And then the last one I'll talk about is my first tornado event with fatalities. And it was a Saturday morning, and we had started going on TV about 6 a.m. It was a line of storms coming on through, and we were kind of in a scenario where the timing might have helped us scrape through without too many problems. We had one area get hit by a couple of tornadoes that morning with the line coming through, but instability was at its lowest point. There was still quite a bit there. The worst threat seemed to be to the west, and then later that day to the east. And were we going to slip through that event without that? And we had kind of talked about that a lot on air. And from 6 o'clock till about 10, 11, we were doing wall-to-wall coverage for warnings, but we didn't have a lot of damage. And I remember getting some messages from people like, I don't know what was on Saturday morning, but people were not happy. And they were kind of complaining and blowing out coverage. You're blowing out with coverage of tornadoes. And it was about 11 a.m. all of a sudden, things started heading south really quickly. That instability had returned, those storms caught up to it, and they just started to explode. And in about a 15-minute time frame, we went from having no problems to we had a really serious tornado strike about 15 miles east of the TV station. It was actually on the Alabama side of the state line in Carroll County. It was near Carrollton. And it was Settlement Road. And Settlement Road was a little neighborhood road west of town. The tornado touched down and just ripped through there. And it was a strong EF2 tornado. And we were pretty quick to get reports out of there while we were on air. And I remember my assistant news director at the time who came in to help. He came in with a report. We could see the tornado on radar. We knew it was there. We could see the debris ball. But he came in and he said, multiple injuries, possible fatalities on Settlement Road. And I had been on air talking about Settlement Road on that. And that road had a number of mobile homes, some frame homes, things of that. And the reports just kept getting more and more daunting from there. They were looking for a missing baby. There were kids that were injured. There was people they couldn't find. And so they were doing an all call for rescue volunteers. And I remember the family of there were 3 people that died there, and I remember the family reached out to me and kind of told me what happened. And it was weird because what they said that the last thing they saw on TV was me before the tornado hit. And I just wondered, why didn't they do something? Why didn't they take shelter? They knew the tornado was coming. And that kind of stuck with me where, why don't people take actions? And so some of my grad school research really dealt with that. So, what causes people to take action? And that's why I'm so passionate about getting out in the field and showing people the tornadoes. They were like, well, we just saw radar. And by the time the tornado touched down, they didn't have a chance to go. I mean, it touched down at the end of the road and swept through, and by the time we said, there it is, it's on the ground, it had already gone through there. Because once we see on radar that there's a debris signature, it's already happened. It's already happened. It's not like, oh, it's about to happen. Now there's debris, there's things being lofted, pieces of building, trees, cars, 2x4s, things of that. And I remember afterwards kind of driving through that area, and it was just entirely destroyed. I mean, there were mobile homes that you could tell where they were sitting and they were gone. And I remember kind of talking to some people from that area about what had happened and whatnot. And, I'll never forget those people who died, and I'll never forget those people who were affected by all the storms that I've covered over the years. And so that's kind of what motivates me.
I would say the two of the biggest events that I've covered in my career is in one night. When I worked in Springfield, Missouri, we were on the air for 18 hours straight. 18. In our viewing area, we had 33 tornadoes that touched down in the course of those 18 hours. 33. It was January. Yes, the month was January 7th and 8th, 2008, and we had 33 tornadoes in one night, and they just trained over the same areas. And one of those tornadoes came within a block of the TV station while we were on the air. We had to take shelter, and it was pretty wild. Now, a few years later, I covered one of the largest, deadliest tornadoes to ever occur, which was the Joplin EF5 tornado, and May 22nd, 2011. And that will forever be ingrained in my memory, as I was there right after it happened. The smells, just the sheer 365-degree devastation in all directions and as I was trying to describe to people on the air what I was seeing, I always felt I was doing an injustice, because you just can't, the human brain can't wrap around an EF5 tornado damage. It's tough to put into words what you're seeing, and so you try to do your best to try to explain it, but the smells of natural gas, wood, broken wood, and just almost the smell of, and it sounds bad because it was, but there was a smell of death there, and 161 people died, and some of them were still around you, possibly not still in the rubble. And so it was that was one of the biggest things that I've ever covered and will never forget, and I can still just remember it to this day very, very vividly.
What's it mean to you now? 12 straight years, you are now number one for weather rate, most accurate.
I think the weather rate is a really cool thing. It's an independent third-party company, and they take the forecast from TV stations all around the country, and they rate them on a scale. I mean, they're looking, how accurate are you in temperatures? How accurate are you in rainfall? Are you predicting fog, wind, severe weather, all those things like that? And so they take our forecasts and compare them across the region, and for 12 years we've had that. And the cool part about that too is that is actually a continuation of the legacy of Robert Reese. Mm-hmm. Robert Reese started that program, started participating in that back, it was not long before he passed away, where they started to work towards that accomplishment. Weather Rate had just started to do the program, and so that 12 years is a continuation of his legacy, because this has always been a station that's cared about being accurate. If we say it's going to be sunny and 75, it better be sunny and 75 and not 30 and snowing, things like that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that rating does mean we have a high standard, but it doesn't mean we're perfect. That's the other thing I would say. And we've had times where either a great deal of uncertainty with the forecast, or we've been wrong. A lot of people like to joke that we're right half the time, right?
Well, I would say weather rate kind of disproves that.
It does, but it's fun to say meteorologist right half the time. I tell my wife that I'm right half the time at home and wrong half the time at work. But the idea of weather rate too is that's on a scale of 0 to 100%, and we have consistently been 94, 95, 96% accurate.
And we've got our hands in it because we work here now too. But I remember that was a big promotional thing and a big thing that they did even when I was interning here. I don't know if you remember that, but they were still promoting how many years accurate, and it was a good amount of years too.
It's up to 12, and we're looking like maybe we'll be 13, and it'd be awesome to continue that going.
2012 is when it started then, right?
Yeah, 2012. That's math. Yeah.
I'm just making sure my math was right.
Yeah. So it's been pretty cool to be a part of that.
What it means to me is I think it's amazing, because I came into this, they already had 5 years of it. So now I was able to take that and carry on, take the torch, and have it for another 7 years, and to make it 12 years now. So I'm proud that our team has been able to sustain what was built before us and carried on to where we are now, and hopefully many more.
Yeah, I think that's the coolest thing about it too, is I hopped into it when it was already 10 years, so it was an established thing, and that kind of set the bar for me when I got here too, because I'm like, I can't be the one to screw this up. I need to make sure that I'm ready to go. But the fact that we've, added 2 years onto that since I've been here, that's kind of reassured me that I'm doing, I would think, a pretty decent job here, and that I kind of belong. But it is a very unique thing to be part of, because this thing started when I was 12 years old. So to be joining in on that 10 years ago when I was, still in junior high or something like that, that's a pretty neat thing to have joined in on.
Congratulations to the WCIA3 weather team, certified most accurate 12 years in a row.
I was going to say, for me, I've learned that weather, I don't know, how do I put this? TV in general is a lot different than what it looks on the outside. Not in a bad way, it is a different animal than people think. And there's a lot more sacrifice, personal sacrifice that you have to kind of put through that people don't think about. Like we said, news and weather, they don't stop. And at my first market, I was both news and weather at the same time. So those didn't stop at the same time. I mean, we sacrifice holidays. You don't think about that because, you know, you're thinking about just being on TV and talking about the weather. Well, we do have to sacrifice holidays, sometimes family events as well. And you got to make the sacrifice of moving somewhere that you're not from. I am from Northwest Indiana. Our market is Chicagoland. I was not going to have a starting job in Chicago, so I had to move somewhere else to get my foot in the door and then work my way back, which I think I've done pretty successfully too. So there's that. Long hours too that you don't think about. I mean, you think you just do the weather forecast, but I mean, there are days, like we've mentioned before, where we have 12, 13, 14-hour days. I think the longest day I ever put in was when I worked the morning show at my first station, then I came back at 6 o'clock at night, and I was there till 9 o'clock the next morning, basically.
Yeah, I've had some long days too. In addition to that, I think some of the things that I've learned is that, you know, like, okay, this is an important job, but you just gotta have fun.
Yeah.
That's what I always want to do is have fun. And I think
And
people at home want to have fun too. So that's the other thing I would say is, it doesn't always have to be about the weather. Obviously, that's what makes us connect with people the most. And when we're out in public, people recognize us, and it's fine. I think something I always tell young, up-and-coming TV people as well is, you know, you're probably gonna have a lot of people like, oh, hey, I see you on TV. Hey, it's nice to meet you. And that's the one time in their life that they might ever meet someone on TV or something like that. But you're gonna have that experience hundreds and thousands of times where you're having that somebody's meeting you for the first time, and you can't have, like, I don't say you have to put on a smiley face, but like you want to make sure that that is an experience that someone doesn't look and be like, oh,
yeah.
like, oh, they were kind of mean. Oh, they were kind of rude.
And we're not always 100% on our A game every single day, so give us some grace. I mean, a little bit, you know, just be like, hey, maybe you caught them at a bedtime. But I mean, I try to be my best when I see people because it's like this is a big deal for them, and sometimes it's you know, for me it's the 100th person that week that said hello. Which, but to be fair, I like to say hello to anybody. So even if I wasn't on TV, we start having a conversation. Yeah, well, but when people say hello, I try to be nice in general, even if I wasn't on TV. So I mean, that kind of helps a little bit. But
because you want to have
it can be daunting for a while because, you know, if you've worked a long week and then someone says, hey, can we talk a little bit? And it's just like, yes, but I'm very tired, so I'm not at my full self.
And I think
so. I apologize if you caught me at the wrong time. I look like horrendous, like I just got out of the gym, because sometimes I do. But I do my best. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, no, and that's something too, where, like, you know, making sure that you're having a good experience with someone, because they're going to remember that for the rest of their life.
Yes.
They're not going to remember a lick of what I said to them, but they'll be like, man, he's so nice.
Yes.
Good. I'm glad you think that.
I hope so. That's what I'm trying to be
we're
nice.
Not that nice. We're pretty mean people overall. I kid. But no, you know, that experience that you're having, and some of that's kind of a privilege. Like, we have the privilege of going into people's homes every day, every morning, every night. They wake up with us, they go to bed with us, they turn to us during inclement hazardous weather. And so, you know, to me, turning that around and just being like, yeah, you're a part of my, you know, I'm a part of your life, you should be a part of my life. And social media has really helped out with that as well.
Yeah.
I have a feeling me and Kevin are going to have very different answers here, because you've got a lot of, he's got a nice little career built up. I've only got a couple years, but I can still kind of remember the stuff, because I had never really been part of a big kind of like radio or TV production, other than I did a few things at Lakeland College, so I did a couple radio things there. But I think the thing that sticks out to me the most is that there is so much more that goes on in the background than you think there is. And I hear that all the time. My parents say that, any kind of friends that I bring in here, they cannot believe, you know, the size of the studio. Some think it's smaller than normal, but they also can't believe the number of people that are working in production, the people that are in the newsroom on a given day. If they don't see the face on TV, they really don't know who that person is sometimes, unless they read the website and see some names. But there are just close to what feels like hundreds of people working here. I don't think that's the actual number, obviously, but there's so many people working here to put a good product in play. And I think that's one thing that I've learned, is that the on-air personalities are the people you know, but they're not exactly the only ones that make it work. There is a lot of people here, and there is a lot of, like I said earlier, kind of a rotating door sometimes in certain positions. I didn't always know that. I kind of thought there would be, you know, maybe just a little more stability in certain places. Not that that's a bad thing, but I've kind of learned that's the TV business. Everyone's trying to work their way up. So I've learned that there's just a lot more people that go into making good product than what I would have initially thought before.
Early in my career to where I am now, what I've learned is that words and tone matter a lot. The specific words that you choose and how you go about presenting actually means a lot. Before, I would say, hey, we've got a nice sunny weekend, it's awesome, it's gonna be great. And I didn't really think about always, That's not good for the farmer that needs the rain. And on the flip side, if I say, oh, we're finally getting some of that rain coming in, all right, well, that's not good for the bride that has the wedding outdoors this weekend. So you really think about everyone. Everybody has a different, reason behind why they want a certain kind of weather. You have to take that into account in a broadcast and not just kind of put everybody into one box. Everybody wants something different. And so, everybody has a different opinion about it. So you can't go on the air and just tout a certain weather thing and think that that's good, because whatever's good for somebody may be bad for another. So you just kind of have to give the weather, and that's something that took me a while to kind of learn, and the tone of voice and the tone that you use from a nice weather day to a serious weather day really makes a difference, because you want to grab the people's attention so that they know, especially in severe weather, that something is really serious. So words matter, tone matters.
I don't know. It depends on what you mean by biggest role model.
That's true.
Because is it about weather? Is it about personal life? Is it about all that kind of stuff? I don't know, because some of the answers that I could give would be obvious ones, like Tom Skilling for career wise. I mean, Tom's great. He's super passionate, and he was the king of Chicago weather wise too. I would say that my grandfather's another one. I feel like I'm listing more than just my biggest, but my grandfather, I think, from more of a personal standpoint, as he showed me kind of how you're supposed to do things. You do it the right way the first time, you don't have to do it twice, or and sometimes I'm not very good about doing that. I mean, I have to do it several times, just the way my brain works. But he was a good guy, and I miss him, but he was also he was willing to help anybody, and I always try to be good about that. So when I win calls, I do my best to get ready to help them. And then obviously another big one that, more of a spiritual one, obviously Jesus. I mean, that's a big one. I mean, I think a lot of people say that. I know it almost sounds cliche, but it's true. He's a big person in my life. I mean, I think Jacob can agree to that. Mm-hmm. So your turn.
My turn. From a career-wise, Robert Reese. I think of what Robert Reese did at the station, and I always try and think of, in situations, what would he have done? He was a big yes man. He was always willing to help people. And so whether it's news stories, bringing in kids to the studio, going and visiting schools, things like that, most people who are from here know the name Robert Reese and what he did. I was a kidcaster for him, and that kind of got my career kick-started back when I was in 5th grade, my first time on TV. And then after that, when Derek Faber was chief, I interned with him. With Judy Fraser, I was a weather watcher. But yeah, I think of Robert Reese from a career perspective is definitely that way. Mm-hmm. And then I've got some other, career ones from, people I've chief meteorologists and whatnot that I've met, interacted with. That
Jackson's
I always
a big
look up
one.
to. Yeah. And then spiritual-wise, my faith is important. That's something that is, I think of the story that got me back to Central Illinois. It is not one I would have wrote. I never thought I'd come home, but hindsight's 2020. You look at that, and I'm like, I couldn't have wrote that any better to get back here. And I also think too, like my faith, while doing the weather, to me, the science of meteorology proves creation.
I can see that.
It's just like the fact that some people think that it's all by a random explosion, a random chance, that it is so intricate. Weather is so intricate. There are so many different things. The atmosphere being so much of a fluid, like how could that be something that is random chance? It to me just points entirely to creation. Is the field of meteorology, like the science there, just proves that to me. I have no doubt in my mind.
I think the science is not so much about the awe and wonder of
That's
it.
true.
That's what gets me. I'm like, wow, okay, God did a really good job on this.
Yeah. And sometimes I know people, I don't want to get into a theological battle, but when you think about how intricate and how much like intelligent design, it's the only answer. And so creation and Christianity is definitely that for me. And then Adam, I look at that too.
For me, my biggest role model, just in general, are my parents. They always pushed me to do all this stuff, and it was, when they knew I wanted to be a weatherman, it was, an ambitious thing. You don't hear a kid say that every day, especially where I'm from. But their continued motivation, and not just, kind of thing where it was like, oh, let's think about, something more realistic, because they actually, believed in me to be able to do that. So those two are probably my biggest role models, just from a life perspective. Obviously, they pushed me through everything. I want to include my grandpa up there too, because obviously he raised my dad. He was the one that kind of gave dad his interest too. And I've only told a few people this, but the tie that I wear in my pictures on the website, whenever it shows my graphic, in any kind of commercials or when I come on screen, that is my grandpa's tie. He died just a month before I actually went on the air, so he unfortunately never did get to see me on TV. But he's definitely one of my biggest role models too, and that's kind of my way of paying tribute to him. It's a really old looking tie. I think Jacob gives me crap sometimes for wearing some of the old ties, but some of them are grandpa's, so that's kind of my way of paying back to him. But from like anything weather related, any of the guys at the Weather Channel during the time that I watched, obviously Greg Forbes is a classic name, Jim Cantori, Mike Bettis, those are kind of the guys that I think of, because those are the big Weather Channel guys. Those are the ones that I followed the most when I was growing up.
Yeah, I'm very similar there. It would be my mom and dad as well, who always encouraged me ever since I was 5 years old. So something that they always pushed me along, never said, you know what, kid, you probably ain't gonna be a TV meteorologist. So they were always there encouraging me along the way the whole time, and so that's refreshing. Not all kids get that, so definitely them, and still to this day. Fortunate enough to have both of them still alive and supporting me still, even after all these years. So that's the obvious, but like as Seth said too, I mean, I grew up on the Weather Channel as well. And yeah, man, my boy Jim Cantori, man, that guy just been there from the beginning. And what's cool about it now is I get to hang out with him at weather conferences. So so when we go to weather conferences, he's there. He's this normal guy too, but I grew up watching the guy, and he's been doing it. He's got the passion still after all this time too. So I definitely have watched him over the years, and definitely respect what he's been able to build with what he's been at one place. And again, he's been there the whole time too. So a lot of people jump ship or leave or whatnot, but he's been there a long time, so that's good.
Thank you guys for what you do, number one, because you have a job and your responsibility is to take care of people's lives and make sure people know what's going on in severe weather. But 5 to 10 years down the line, 5-10 years down, what are your plans?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one of those things is that there's a lot of things in my life that I think you're supposed to write your life in pencil, not in pen, because there's going to be a lot of changes, a lot of things that happen that you do and don't see. So for me, I don't know what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years. I don't even know if I'm going to be here in the next 5 years. Not like physically here, but here in the TV station, So I don't know what's going to happen. There are some other avenues that I have thought about that I want to do that's not weather related or even TV related, but at the same time, there are days that I'm like, man, I could do this for a little bit longer too. But I don't know. I'm also getting to that point where I'm getting kind of old, man. I feel like the old man in the room now that we're doing the morning show and I'm the oldest guy on the set, so.
I think I'm older than you, though.
You are older than me, but still, I'm starting to feel old. I think it's just because I don't get enough sleep. That's probably it.
That's true. I can write it down. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I'll be in 5 to 10 years. I'd like to say I'm doing this and that, but I think from a faith perspective, I'm not worried about that. I'm here today, and that's what I'm going to do, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. And once the Lord's like, all right, time to move, that to me, my wife and I have talked a lot about that. What do we want to do? Would we want to go anywhere? Things of that.
Giving it up to God.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. Like, I know I've been called to be here, and I know my mission right now, what to do, and so I'm going to keep doing that until I get told otherwise. It's probably the big thing. And that can happen really quick. I was very certain the Lord had me down in Oklahoma. I was going to be a chief meteorologist at the local TV station down there in southwest Oklahoma. Was setting it up. COVID was kind of a weird time where budgets and schedules and things like that, but all of that was, that path was clear, and it was like, whoop, just kidding. this door opened and I knew the Lord was moving that way. And it worked out. I met my wife coming back here.
Yeah, and you're talking about 5-10 years. I didn't know what I was going to do when I was in Joplin. It was COVID again.
Yeah.
And I was on my third year there, but like the middle of my third year, towards the end of it, and my grandfather passed away from COVID, and so I had just this sense that I needed to get closer. So that's when I signed up to go to Peoria, or applied to go to Peoria, our sister station WMBD. Was there for not even 2 years, and then
we swiped them.
Yeah. But no, I saw the opportunity here, and I thought, well, if there's anywhere in my career that I want to, at least do or finish out at some point, at some point I wanted to get back here in my career, whether it's the beginning, middle, or end, and we're in the middle of it still, so I'd say I got in right at the good time to kind of work with these guys.
People are probably thinking, oh my gosh, they're going to be leaving.
No,
We're not leaving.
No.
We're not leaving.
We'll let you know when we do, but if and when we do.
Big if, because,
who knows?
I think from us both being men of faith, we're like, we think we want to do this, and one day the Lord may be like, just kidding, you're actually going to go do that. And so that's kind of, I think, where we settle. Mm-hmm. Plus, working for Kevin.
Yeah, it's tricky because nobody knows the future. 5 years ago, I don't know if I would have said this because, this is kind of a very lucky thing that I happen to get into. But one thing that I know for sure, 5 to 10 years from now, no matter what form it looks like, being close to family and friends is always important to me. That's, a big reason why I'm at this station. That's a big reason why I'm not in any hurry to go. But to whatever capacity it looks like, I feel like I kind of want to stay close to home. I know that's not exactly the nature of this job. That's kind of the unknown that still lurks ahead for me. But I think, like I said at the beginning, being able to broadcast to the people that I know, that gives me a little extra incentive. No matter where I go, I'm going to try to do my best, but it just has a little extra reason to do what I do when I'm here close to home. So whatever that looks like 5 to 10 years from now, I've got a feeling it'll still be pretty close to Central Illinois.
Yeah, listen, I hope I'm still doing this. Hey, and the people that came before me, that's what's so unique about the position that I was able to get as a chief meteorologist here in the 70 years of broadcasting at WCIA. There were only ever 4 chief meteorologists ever, so I've been the 5th. So over the course of that many years, only have 4 chiefs, and I get to be the 5th. Listen, I would love to run it out just like they did too. The ones that came before me, Judy Fraser, Robert Reese, and Mr. Roberts. I mean, those guys and gals were here, and it'd be great if that's the case. That, or I hit the lottery and I own a beach somewhere. I mean, that'll be okay too. I can still get weather reports from the beach. It'll be great.